In this episode, we'll talk about some of the audio terms you'll hear on set. Let's just talk quickly about some of the audio terms you'll hear on set. The first one is going to be wires, and this is actually counterintuitive because a lot of times when mixers are talking about wires, or directors or whomever, they're actually talking about wireless microphones, which is kind of counterintuitive. And usually this, of course, is a body pack transmitter along with a lavalier microphone that's hidden. So for example, in this piece here, I'm recording with two microphones actually. I've got this little condenser mic, which I'm holding this time, which is not normally what you would do, of course. But then I've also got a lavalier microphone hidden just under my shirt here. So again, wires actually refers to wireless microphones. Along with that, when you are told as an audio mixer by the director, go get everyone wired up, that means to put wireless microphones on all of the actors. Plant mic. What is a plant mic? A plant mic is a mic that you hide somewhere on set. So if an actor is going to walk over to maybe a different part of the room and say a line, you might hide a plant mic somewhere on that side of the room where it will pick them up. So the reason it got its name was that sometimes you hid them in plants, and it can be hidden anywhere, but it's still called a plant mic, and it means you're planting that mic somewhere on the set so that you don't. It's usually used in cases where you can't boom. If you either can't reach it or there's a light in the way or whatever the case may be, you can put a plant mic in that spot where the actor will say their line. Next up is boom mic. Everyone thinks they know what boom mic means, but actually some people are a little mistaken on that. Most people assume that a shotgun mic equals a boom mic, and it is true that a shotgun mic is a boom microphone. That is to say, it is put on the end of a boom pole. However, that's not the only type of boom mic that there is. There are also small diaphragm condenser mics that are typically referred to as boom mics as well. They're typically used more indoors, not always, but most of the time. And oftentimes they're considered or called pencil condenser microphones. They have various types of polar patterns or pickup patterns. They can be cardioid, supercardioid, or hypercardioid. And this, for example, is what would normally be used on the end of a boom pole. So this could be called a boom mic. This is actually a cardioid mic. In this case, it's the Rode TF5, a brand new microphone from Rode, which we'll be reviewing here in the next little bit. So just in summary, a boom mic is a microphone that's mounted to the end of a boom pole, period. And it can be a lot of different types of mics. A lav is a lavalier microphone. These are the tiny little body-worn microphones. They don't always have to be placed on the chest, but that's typically where they're worn. You can hide them in hair, hide them behind an ear. You can hide them in the clothing in various places. There are lots of places you can hide them for narrative type work. You can also clip them on. So if it's okay to see the microphone in the scene, then you can just clip them on. And that's often used more in corporate type video shoots, events, and things of that nature. Next up is a slate, and a slate is variously called a clapper board. It's called a slate board. It's just called a slate sometimes. Usually it is the clapper board, the thing that has a clapper on top of it, but it also has information written on it, which will be information that will be used in post-production to help on a variety of different things. So first of all, the slate can be used even if you're using timecode. So if you're using timecode on your camera and audio recorder and you're recording them separately, you still might want to use, and I typically will still use a slate, because if something goes wrong with the timecode, then the slate becomes your backup. In addition to that, the slate has information on it. So it shows you which take you are on within a scene, and it makes it a lot easier for the editor or assistant editor to kind of organize all of the footage. So it can be really, really helpful for all of those reasons. Of course, it provides the sync point if timecode is not something you're using or the timecode didn't work for whatever reason. So as soon as that clapper board hits and closes, you get a very sharp transient in the audio. And of course, you have a visual cue in the video, so it's very easy to line those up. Next up, let's talk about some people on set. In the sound department, first of all, is the production sound mixer. Now, this is the person who is in charge of sound for the film production, and they are ultimately responsible for delivering good dialogue sound to the post team, and in some cases also sound effects, room tone, ambiance, all of the recorded sound that's done during the production. They're responsible for making as high quality sound as possible. Now, sometimes a production will just have a sound mixer, and this will be a person that will be wearing, for example, a vest with a mixer attached to it. They'll be holding the boom pole. They'll be responsible for wiring up the talent with the wireless lavalier microphones. They'll be responsible for everything sound related. Oh, also they'll be responsible for working with the camera department to set up the timecode generators that are connected to each of the cameras, plus their own timecode generator that's either inside of their audio mixer recorder or attached to it. So this person is responsible for everything sound related. And in some cases on the more professional, higher budget productions, they are not necessarily responsible for bringing the slate. That's actually the camera department. But on the smaller productions, I always bring a slate with me because it's like 9 times out of 10 camera forgets to bring one. So if you're on a very formal union job, I think it is the camera department that is responsible for bringing the slate. And if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments below. Thanks to Airtable for sponsoring this episode. When I first started working sound for film, on my very first job, I forgot to bring the hiding kit for my lavalier microphones. Seriously. So how do you avoid being that guy? Planning and checklists. Ugh, what a drag, you say. Well, Airtable is the online and mobile tool that makes planning and checklists dead simple and makes your pre-production, production, and post a lot less stressful and a lot more enjoyable. With Airtable, you can create databases of your gear and then drag and drop that gear into different checklists for different types of jobs. But it isn't just for soundies. With the mapping, you can plan out locations. With Gantt charts, producers and directors can plan out schedules so you don't end up hating yourself in post when you forgot to get that pickup shot. And everyone can share their stuff with everyone else on the crew. There are both free and pro account levels. Go check out my packing list and you can see how Airtable can help you be the guy that everyone wants on their next film project. Now, if it's a bigger production and they have the budget, there can also be a separate boom operator. So you'll have the mixer that will sit at a sound cart or using a sound bag, generally a little bit farther away from set, and then it'll be the boom operator that'll be right up on set, booming the microphone, that is using a boom pole with a microphone out on the end of it, and putting that out over the actors, and cueing that boom pole and that microphone back and forth between the actors as they say their lines. And this is a very physical job. It takes a lot of energy. And when there's a long take, that is, for example, a take that's longer than a minute, that can get very tiring. So you've got to be in pretty good condition to be a good boom op. In addition to that, boom operators are actually very skilled from the standpoint that they also need to understand camera department and lighting department stuff as well. So when the production is moving along, a lot of times they need to understand what focal length the lens is so they know about where they can put their boom mic in, how close they can get it to the talent without it showing in the shot. They can also, of course, ask the camera department as they're setting up a shot to give them a line so they know where to put the boom mic so they don't get in the shot. But a lot of times it really helps if the boom op understands the different focal lengths and can therefore adjust where they're putting the boom mic. They also have to work with the lighting department or the electric department to make sure they can find a place where they can boom the mic without putting shadows somewhere in the scene. So if a light is shooting past or, right through or past the boom mic, it can leave a shadow, and you don't want that, obviously. So they may have to work with the lighting department to find a space to put the boom mic. And in some cases, if they can't find a space, that's where they might use a plant mic instead. The third and final person on set in the sound department is the utility. In the past, I've heard this called the cable man or the cable puller. Those terms aren't used so much anymore. Now it's utility. This person is basically responsible for everything else in the sound department, whatever the sound mixer asks them to do. Sometimes they will be a second boom operator. Oftentimes they will be responsible for wiring up the talent with the lavalier microphones, wireless lavalier microphones. They'll be responsible for changing batteries in those transmitters. They will be responsible for doing whatever the sound mixer asks them to do. And it's really kind of the entry-level position, although they're absolutely critical when you're working on big productions. They'll learn a lot, and at some point may be able to move up to boom operator or mixer. Next up is Comtex. What are Comtex? These are actually wireless headphones that you give to members of the crew. So oftentimes you'll give one of these to the director, to a script supervisor, maybe to a producer, so they can hear what's being recorded during the actual takes. And for them, that helps them make decisions about whether or not that was a good take or not, and be able to provide additional direction if they want to do that as well. So these are usually connected to the mixer, the recorder mixer, and these are brought by the sound department, and then they have a receiver that they wear on their belt and some headphones to go with that. So the reason they're called Comtex is kind of traditionally, there was a company called Comtech, which is still in business, and actually I have some Comtex that actually that provided this kind of system. And what you do is you connect one transmitter to your mixer on the outputs, and that sends whatever the mix is over to the people that are wearing the wireless headphones. Often, the mixer may not send the entire mix to the people with the headphones. They may just send the boom mic, for example. And in fact, typically that's what I'll do, because I think sometimes they get confused when they're hearing both the lavalier microphones and the boom mic, because they'll start to hear, in some cases, some phasing issues and things of that nature. So they get confused in thinking the sound doesn't sound very good, what's wrong? When in fact, really what's happening is it's just phasing, and we're recording isolated lavalier microphones to their own channels. So in post, you won't get that effect. You'll choose either the boom mic or the lav mic. So there's some background on Comtex. Sometimes you will hear people call those IFB, and IFB stands for interruptible feedback. I think technically an IFB is actually a little bit different, where not only is it a wireless headphone, but it's like something that an on-camera talent, like someone in the electronic news gathering, would wear, where the director can actually talk to them while they're talking on camera. So I think IFB really is a little bit more specific, but sometimes you'll hear people call these just wireless headphones IFB as well. And then finally, another term I've heard a lot is comms, and actually comms just refer to wireless radios. Usually this is just something that the sound department uses, and it's two-way radio. So that is to say that the mixer can talk to their boom operator and talk to their utility. So it really just sort of keeps them in touch so that they can communicate and solve problems actually during the production itself and get everyone working as efficiently as possible together. So there are some audio terms that you may not have heard on set, or you may have heard and you weren't sure what they meant. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. And if you have not already subscribed, make sure you do that. And we'll be sure to get you more great videos on how to improve your lighting and sound for video. Talk to you soon.